The HOA had always walked around the neighborhood like they were kings of the land, as if their word was law, their rules unbreakable, and everyone living nearby was beneath them. But they didn't know one thing. The man they were about to challenge wasn't someone they could intimidate. My ranch wasn't just a piece of property. It was a 150-year-old legacy, a land my family had protected, worked on, and bled for. But the HOA members, blinded by arrogance, thought their authority extended to my doorstep. One morning, I heard loud knocks at my front gate. 5 HOA members stood there, each with a file in their hands and superiority on their faces. Their leader, an older man with silver hair and an inflated ego, stepped forward. "We've decided," he said confidently, "that you need to sell your ranch to the HOA. It's necessary for our community's development." I opened the gate, keeping my expression calm. "My ranch?" I asked. "You've decided something about my land. On what basis?" He opened his file dramatically. "On the basis of our authority. If you refuse, we'll start issuing fines, warnings, and take action until you comply." I almost laughed. They truly had no idea who they were talking to, or what the truth actually was. I gestured for them to follow me inside. They marched in like they owned the house. I walked straight to a shelf and pulled out a thick, old leather file, the real documents. The kind of documents that carried history, signatures, surveys, and ownership stamped through generations. I placed the file on the table. "Sit," I said calmly. "You're about to learn something important." They opened the file, and the moment their eyes fell on the first page, their confident expressions cracked. What is this?" One of them stuttered. I leaned back in my chair. "This," I said, "is the truth you should have known before barging in here with threats." They flipped through the pages, shock spreading across their faces as they read line after line. The documents clearly stated that my family owned not only the ranch, but the entire land on which their neighborhood was built. The streets, the lots, the parks, the green belts, even the HOA office itself, all constructed on land my family never sold. The HOA was created later, but ownership had always remained with us. "You mean," one muttered, almost unable to breathe, "the whole neighborhood is yours?" I nodded. "You tried to pressure me into selling my ranch," I said slowly. "But the truth is, all of you live on my land. Every inch you walk on belongs to me. You can't fine me, you can't threaten me, and you can't force me to sell anything. But I can legally shut down your entire HOA if I choose." Silence hit the room like a hammer. The same people who walked in like roaring lions now sat quietly like stunned statues. Their leader finally managed to speak, his voice trembling. What do you want from us?" I closed the file gently. "Respect," I said. "Stay in your limits. Run your HOA, but don't ever try to control me or my ranch. I'm not your member, and I'm certainly not under your authority." They slowly stood up, gathering their papers carefully, every bit of arrogance drained out of their bodies. No one spoke a word as they headed to the door. Just before leaving, the leader turned and said in a low, humbled voice, We're sorry. It won't happen again." I watched them walk away, their steps no longer loud or proud. I closed the gate behind them, smiling to myself. "Next time," I muttered, "read the history before you make decisions. Otherwise reality hits harder than any rulebook you hold." The HOA had always seen themselves as the ultimate authority, a board of people who believed their signatures were stronger than law, their opinions heavier than truth. For months, they had tried small tactics against me. Letters, warnings, attempts to impose rules on a property that never belonged to them. But the day they demanded my ranch, they crossed a line they didn't even know existed. They thought they had power. They thought they had control. They thought I was just another homeowner living under their rules. But they had no idea the ground beneath their feet, the streets they drove on, the parks their children played in, the land their entire HOA stood on, belonged to me. They didn't know, yet. The arrival. It was early morning when I heard vehicles outside, multiple. I stepped out onto my porch and saw the entire HOA board walking toward my ranch gate, folders in their hands, determination carved into their faces. Their leader, a tall man named Grayson, walked ahead like a general leading a mission. He didn't greet me. He didn't smile. He simply slammed a file onto the hood of my truck and said, We're here to inform you that your ranch is now required for the expansion of the community. The HOA is demanding that you sell your land to us. I raised an eyebrow. Demanding. He nodded proudly. Yes. And if you refuse, we'll start legal action, enforce community regulations, and ensure you are forced to comply. The rest of his board nodded with satisfaction, as if they had already won. They had no idea what they were playing with. The confrontation. I opened my gate and motioned them inside. Come in. You're making a mistake. But if you want the truth, I'll show it to you. They entered with arrogance, inspecting my home like inspectors who had already claimed ownership. Grayson sat down without being invited, placing his file on my table as if he were in charge. Let's get this over with, he said sharply. We'll offer you a fair price, but refusal is not an option. I didn't respond. I simply walked toward my office shelf and pulled out a massive, stone-colored folder. A folder older than every person in the room. A folder containing the history of the land they lived on, and the truth they were about to collide with. I placed it gently on the table. What is this? One of the HOA women asked. The truth, I said softly. The revelation. I opened the first page, a land deed signed 150 years ago. The next, a territorial map showing the original boundaries. Then another, a legal confirmation issued decades later. They leaned forward, confused. Grayson frowned. What does this have to do with your refusal to sell? I pushed the file toward him. Read the owner's name. He looked down. His face froze. He read it again. Then again. His voice cracked. This can't be real. But it was. The documents clearly stated that my family owned not just the ranch, but the entire land the community was built on. Every house, every yard, every sidewalk, every corner of their precious HOA stood on my property. You mean, one of them whispered, the whole neighborhood belongs to you? I nodded. Yes, legally, I own everything under your homes. Your HOA was formed decades later, but the land was never transferred. The community exists on land leased by default, land you never researched, land you assumed you controlled. They all looked sick. The arrogance faded instantly. Fear crept in. The turning point. Grayson's voice shook as he asked. So, all the fines we sent you, all the notices. Meaningless, I replied. You cannot enforce HOA authority on the person who owns the land beneath your entire organization. One woman covered her mouth. Another man leaned back, stunned. Their confidence had crumbled like dust. I continued. You came here threatening me with legal action. But in reality, I could dissolve your HOA tomorrow. I could evict every board member. I could shut down your office. And I could do it with the same laws you tried to use against me. Grayson swallowed hard. He wasn't the king anymore. He wasn't even a soldier. He was a trespasser, standing on the land of the man he tried to intimidate. The surrender. After several minutes of silence, Grayson finally spoke, quieter than I had ever heard him. What do you want from us? I closed the folder and looked each of them in the eye. I want you to respect boundaries. I want you to stop bullying homeowners. I want you to stop acting as if your authority is limitless. You run a neighborhood association, not a kingdom. They nodded quickly, grateful the conversation wasn't ending with eviction notices. Grayson stood, head lowered. We're sorry. We didn't know. That's the point, I said. You never bothered to know. And that almost cost you everything. They turned and walked out slowly. Not proudly, not confidently, but like people who had just seen their entire world collapse and rebuild in the same hour. The lesson they learned. As they left, I closed the gate behind them. The morning sun was rising, casting long shadows over the land. My land. The land their entire HOA rested on. One day, I said quietly to myself, they'll remember this as the day they learned who really owns this neighborhood. And I walked back inside, leaving behind the silence of a neighborhood whose rulers had just discovered they were never rulers at all.